Anarchy is known to being the slowest but most effective boss DPS weapon in Destiny 2, totaling with up to 3.6 million base damage output without any damage increase from buffed sources. Not to mention that this damage is passive and you can pretty much sit back and relax whilst your boss dies over time. There have been a few exotic heavy weapons in Destiny 2 that have been slightly overpowered. Well, I guess that's one way to put it. Anyway, I was referring to exotics like Anarchy, the Lament, Xenophage, and even Wardcliff Coil at one point. But are these exotics really overpowered and need a nerf, or do other exotics just need to be tuned up to their level? Let me know your answer to that below. But in this video we are taking a look at the top best exotic heavy weapon in Destiny 2 Beyond Light, and by that I mean Anarchy. So this is your Anarchy review, and is it worth using in 2021. We'll go over the damage and DPS, how it performs in PvE and PvP, with a bunch of other stuff. So I've done a primary kinetic weapon review, an energy special, and now this is your heavy? Well guys, I think I messed that intro up, so yeah, let's just roll the intro. Now to show you how Anarchy performs in the game, the background gameplay will be a Master Nightfall, so you can get a feel for how you should be using Anarchy in Destiny 2, and what the best loadouts are to combine it with. Now if you've missed my previous weapon guides, I now have a playlist which is linked below if you want to check that out. All my other 2021 weapon reviews up to date will be in that playlist. But this is your full Anarchy weapon breakdown and review in 2021. All timestamps are in the description if you hate me or I am boring you to death, so you can just skip to another section. So before we get into the review, we need to know how to get the weapon first. So how do we get Anarchy in Destiny 2 Beyond Light in 2021? Well, like most of my weapon reviews, you can obtain this exotic from the Exotic Archive located in the Tower Courtyard under the Forsaken Exotics, and boy did they have some good exotics back then. But you will find this there for a cost of 1 exotic cipher, 150,000 glimmer, 240 spoils of conquest, and 2 ascendant shards. Currently as of season 14, you are required to have one of the expansions to obtain this. And this is because to buy the weapon it requires spoils of conquest, which you can only obtain from playing raids, and raids currently are not free to play. To buy any expansion and start doing a raid to earn spoils of conquest, your best option is to probably buy the latest expansion, which currently is Beyond Light. But you can buy Glimmer from Spider, and as usual, 2 cards are on screen now showing how to get exotic ciphers and ascendant shards if you need to know all the best possible ways to obtain those. At the time of this video though, there is no catalyst and probably never will be, but do let me know if you have any issues obtaining Anarchy in the comments. So Anarchy is an arc heavy exotic grenade launcher that has a huge magazine reserve size of 26. 29 if you have the grenade launcher reserves mod on, or 31 if you have 2 on. It comes with its unique exotic trait arc traps, where grenades stick to the surface and chain arc bolts to other mines. Think of it like an electric fence. But with the perks we have quick launch, high velocity rounds, moving target and composite stock. It's a 150 RPM grenade launcher with 6 rounds in 1 mag. It has a fairly good reload time, handles really well, and overall just makes you feel like a god. No, but seriously, Anarchy is amazing to use in all PvE activities, including Grandmaster Nightfalls. But more importantly, it's perfect for solo players to deal extra boss DPS, because bolts fired from Anarchy will remain on the surface and all targets for a short time, which means you can switch weapons to deal more damage. Back in the day, the best loadout combo was Mountaintop, Recluse and Anarchy, because you could fire 2 shots from Anarchy, then have a fast reload on Mountaintop to get extra DPS in, whilst Anarchy is doing most of the work. The best way to use Anarchy is to fire 2 bolts onto an enemy, then switch to another weapon to deal additional DPS, then once those bolts have worn off, fire another 2 and repeat. Bear in mind that you get up to 31 bolts. I'm pretty sure you'll be able to melt any boss in the game solo by just sitting behind a corner whilst your Anarchy does all the work. Now you can fire up to 6 Anarchy bolts and have them attached to the floor or enemy, which is good if you want to make the area of damage larger, but it won't increase its damage output. For your DPS, only 2 bolts will provide the maximum damage, so if you fire 2 bolts at an enemy, that will be your maximum damage output from Anarchy, and even if you fire all 6, still only 2 of those bolts will be doing the damage. So the best way to use Anarchy is to fire 2 bolts, switch for DPS, then fire another 2 bolts, then switch back and just repeat the process. Each bolt fired does last around 10 seconds, so you'll have time to get a few shots on with your other weapons before switching back. 1 Anarchy bolt alone will deal a maximum of 104,880 damage over the course of 10 seconds, which puts its DPS at 10,488 or 5,244 damage per 20 activations of a single Anarchy bolt. But because you can double up on that, you then times that by 2 and your damage becomes your DPS at 10,488, which puts it up to 20,976 damage per second, or DPS, however you want to call it, and that totals your passive damage to 209,760 per 2 Anarchy bolts fully attached for the full duration. Now say you were super effective with your bolts and managed to use all 31 on a boss. That'll put your base max damage to 3.25 million. And guys, that's without any buffs, and you can just sit there and do nothing but fire 2 Anarchy bolts every 10 seconds. However, the downside is that to achieve that maximum damage, you'll be firing 2 bolts every 10 seconds, which means you need to do that about 15 times, which will take you around 2.5 minutes, and compared to something like a Lament where you'll do less damage overall, but you'll get the damage done in under half the time. So the question you gotta ask is, do I want the best DPS or the best damage? Which takes us to the Anarchy in PvE section. If you want to be quick with killing bosses, go with DPS like the Lament, but if you have a really tanky boss but you're not in a rush, then go with Anarchy, as you'll do more damage in the long run. Otherwise you'll go in fighting a tanky boss and end up using all your heavy ammo on them all at once quickly, but still have the boss standing. Anarchy, well, you'll take them down slower, but they'll go down eventually. And you hardly have to do anything, just kill ads whilst your Anarchy is dealing with the boss, or do extra DPS alongside your Anarchy with another weapon like a special sniper. Now Anarchy is honestly the best weapon alongside the Lament for boss DPS, and you don't just use it for bosses, you use it for champions, hard mages, ultras, mini bosses, and even minor ads if you get swarmed by them. It's a fantastic weapon to use in PvE, and it's really good with the amount of ammo you get from it. I would honestly be surprised if you ever run out of heavy ammo, but you want to use this weapon on the hardest enemies like a Proving Grounds boss or an Inside Terminus boss, as they have a lot of health compared to more meltable bosses like the Lake of Shadows boss. So use Anarchy in those harder endgame activities like a Grandmaster Nightfall or Master Lost Sectors, as it's just insane for those places. But even better, it's good against Overload champions if they are giving you a hard time. If you can put some bolts on an Overload champion, you'll find it much easier to kill them, because as you know, when they aren't staggered, they will get their health back. But Anarchy slows down that process, giving you extra time to stun them again and then finish the kill. So if you guys want an easier time in harder activities, definitely slot this on if you can, but Anarchy does have some downsides in PvE, as it's less effective against shields, and you'll realise that if you try to directly hit an enemy that has a shield, as the bolt will just bounce off the enemy and do nothing. So it's better to have another weapon to first take the enemy shields down and then use Anarchy. Now just briefly looking at PvP, using Anarchy in PvP is not recommended, at least in my opinion. For a heavy exotic, it's definitely for the PvE side and not PvP, although you can use it in there if you want, but you may have a hard time getting kills with it, and you may as well just slot on something like a Wardcliff Coil instead. But if you want to use an exotic heavy grenade launcher in PvP for any reason, then you're better off going with the Colony, as you're pretty much just guaranteed kills, as it can track and follow enemies. But for me, I just wouldn't personally use Anarchy in PvP, but do give me your thoughts on it below. Although if you are going into Gambit, it may be a suitable option there for you, although as I mentioned earlier, it's a slower killing weapon, so it's not going to be the best for you in there, as ideally when you're fighting a Primeval, you want to kill that boss as quick as possible to win the game. So that's where the Lament would probably be your preferred choice there. So the pros and cons of Anarchy. For the pros, this weapon is definitely the best exotic heavy weapon to use against bosses in both solo and team-based endgame activities. You'll be able to melt bosses slowly as passive damage, while swapping to other weapons to do even more DPS. It's great against bosses like the Prophecy Dungeon final boss, the Pit boss, all Nightfalls on any difficulty including Grandmaster, Empire Hunts, Nightmare Hunts, and all the special missions like the Harbinger. Ideally, you would use this weapon alongside another DPS weapon like a sniper or shotgun to really maximise your DPS as well as your total damage overall. It's great to use against champions, and you do get a lot of ammo with this weapon too. However, on the downside, Anarchy's disadvantages are against enemies that have shields up, as hitting them will most likely just send your Anarchy bolt flying across the room. It's okay for Gambit, but it's not the best. Not great in PvP, but that could just be my opinion. And you don't want to use it in activities where you have a lot of shielded enemies like a bunch of wizards moving around, as you're probably going to have a hard time hitting them and will just end up wasting a lot of ammo for bolts to just get launched back in your face. Now for Anarchy, I'd rate this a good 11 out of 10 because of how effective it can be, considering it doesn't have a catalyst and has a max ammo capacity of 31. And not just that, you also don't even have to do anything for it to deal DPS to enemies, so you could just sit behind a wall if you wanted to and let your Anarchy do all the work. But if you use some of the best special weapons in the game alongside Anarchy, you're going to be able to melt bosses in the game so quickly on your own without anyone else needing to be with you. I think it's 100% definitely worth using in 2021 as of season 13 and 14, and I don't think it's going to be moving away from the current PvE meta anytime soon, unless Bungie makes a new exotic that's better than Anarchy or Anarchy gets nerfed, which I doubt it will. But now that said, I want to hear your thoughts on Anarchy and what you think an Anarchy catalyst would do. But guys, if you don't have this weapon yet, you really need to get yourself one from that exotic archive at the tower, so go ahead and buy it, it's 100% worth it. So that is the review for Anarchy in 2021. If you want to see any of my other exotic weapon review videos for 2021, then do go ahead and check out that below, or view my new weapon review playlist that I just only recently created, which will have all of these weapon review breakdowns in, as well as any new exotics that come out in the future seasons. But for now, rate, comment, subscribe and share, and I'll see you all next week for the start of season 14.